Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. For a while I was thinking to myself that today's briefing could be saved for Friday's crime report. But the subject of this morning's briefing just isn't important enough to wait. Nick Fuentes, like most white supremacists, is a bottom-feeding grifter. And like all white supremacists, he thinks about black people all the time. He's got a fixation on black people, an unholy obsession. But I guess that makes sense, because after all, when you're a worthless excuse for a human being, why wouldn't you focus on people who are worth something? But Nick Fuentes is constantly talking about how dangerous black people are, and how black people just keep committing all the crimes in America, because black people are so violent and simply refuse to obey the law like he does. Well, don't look now, but the law-abiding white supremacist got himself arrested for a violent offense, battery in this case. See, what happened is he posted a video celebrating Donald Trump's victory in the election, and he said, "From now on, it's your body, my choice," and also a bunch of other adolescent-sounding sexist taunts. It's about what you expect from Nick Fuentes. Well, this little display got on the bad side of a number of people online, so they doxed him. And apparently people have been passing by this guy's house, either honking their horns or otherwise making noise to disturb him. Seems that one of these passerby hecklers actually got bold, and she went up to his house, and decided to ring his doorbell. And that was when Nick Fuentes threw open the door, pepper sprayed her, knocked her down the stairs, and then smashed her cell phone. And as fate would have it, there were actually witnesses to this little display. And that's the reason that Nick the Felon Fuentes wound up with his own mugshot courtesy of the thugs in blue. Now, Nick the Felon Fuentes lives in the Chicago area, and he's had his fun talking about the violent nature of black people, especially in the Chicago area. And now he's one of those violent criminals. But the predictably violent nature of these anti-black racists isn't the reason that I made him the subject of this morning's briefing. You see, last week, you'll recall, I posted a morning briefing regarding the would-be resurrection of the quote-unquote Black-Brown Alliance / coalition, or as I call it, the coalition that never was. And that's important because this is going to be a dominant theme going at least into the next decade. You've had a whole bunch of individuals who, as far as they're concerned, they see an influx of immigrants as being a solution to the problem of the political demands that are coming from the black grassroots. And it's not just myself or other people in the New Voices of Black media who have been saying this. You've had a number of entities, like these white think tanks, who have been saying the same things. But when they talk about it, they try to limit it just to the white supremacists themselves and saying, well, because the number of Latinos in America is growing, the white supremacists think to themselves that they're going to be bringing more Latinos into their numbers to bolster them because they've been classified as white, etc., etc. But what goes unsaid is, it's not just the white supremacists, it's just the dominant society in general. Because the part that they don't want to talk about is, it's not a matter of these white supremacists are going to be giving some sort of engraved invitation to these folks who immigrate from south of the border, and then they're going to just be unwittingly duped. No. If you look at the history and the culture of these places, especially as it pertains to anti-black racism, what you see is they were already on board with it before they even got here. There's a reason why there's so many, in fact, a disproportionate number of Hispanics who happen to be involved with, if not the leaders of these white supremacist groups. Like Enrique Tarrio, the former leader of the Proud Boys and now current federal convict. Or Stuart Rhodes, who's also cool in his heels, courtesy of Uncle Sam. You'll recall that chump was the leader of the Oath Keepers. His mother is a brown-skinned mestizo from Mexico, so I guess he has that much in common with Nick Fuentes. And then you had that mass shooter down in Allen, Texas, Mauricio Garcia. That guy had himself tattooed with swastikas. To say nothing of the racist Latinos on the LA City Council. This is something that the black community in general and the black grassroots in specific have been talking about for a very, very long time. See, it's not just some unbuttoned lunatics on the far right that you find, or some online bloviators or groypers, as Nick Fuentes likes to call himself, but you also have mainstream politicians all doing the same thing. There's a lot of serious questions that need to be asked about the nature of what's been going on in Latin America for at least the last 100 years, but nobody's been asking about it. And yes, there have been literally one or two Hispanics who'll talk about things such as colorism and such. But the situation runs far, far deeper than that. Because when you look at who these individuals are who you see running these little anti-black and white supremacist organizations, what you find is that they're most likely to be involved in advocating for, if not carrying out, violence. And that factor is what makes the involvement of people like Enrique Tarrio, Stuart Rhodes, Nick Fuentes, and others qualitatively different. Precisely the fact that these guys make it a big point that they want to show everybody how willing they are to commit violence. You know, there's an old bit of popular wisdom that the only thing worse than a genuine gangbanger is a wannabe. Because the wannabe is the main one who'll be going over the top, doing the most just to show everybody how they're basically the craziest of the crazies because they're so genuine. That's what the wannabes will do. They go over the top trying to convince everybody that they're the real thing. We have a similar dynamic that's going on here. And it's not just a matter of Spain was allied with the Nazis during the Second World War. This goes far deeper than that. This has to do with cultural ideology. It also has to do with unresolved self-loathing. That's what's at work here. When you have a guy like Mauricio Garcia who's running around, a brown-skinned mestizo who's putting swastikas on himself and then running out committing a mass shooting, what that tells you is there's a direct connection in the minds of certain individuals between violence, especially over-the-top violence, and showing their willingness to express white supremacist sympathies and leanings. To them, they're one and the same. Well, at least they understand that much. White supremacy gained its position in the world through the use of unrelenting, unrestrained, savage violence. The white supremacists have always understood that violence is exactly how they intend to make sure that black people are kept in line, or at the very least, it's how they intend to inflict some sort of punishment or cost on black people for daring to stand up for ourselves or to otherwise push back against our oppression. You want the white supremacists to take you seriously, you gotta show you're willing to kill for the cause. And that's the reason why violence and white supremacy are inextricably linked. You can't separate the two because they are one and the same. Now, to the best of my knowledge, Nick Fuentes has been bailed out, or otherwise he's back on the loose again, no doubt looking for his next victim. But the thing about it is, this is the kind of individual who the Stephen Millers and such would like to have around, to be their little mascot. And he would be only too happy and eager to play that role. But he wouldn't be alone. What Nick Fuentes is doing is he's showing that there is a deep-seated vein of anti-black racism that is being taught not just by those who are quote-unquote classified as white, but also by other groups who are supposed to be allegedly minorities and people of color, and they're teaching this stuff in the home and teaching it early. Nick Fuentes is young. He's no boomer. Hell, he's not even a Gen Xer. In fact, he's barely a millennial. He was born in 1998. That means a couple of years more, and he would be Generation Z. That's who Nick Fuentes is. And this is a guy who was yucking it up with Trump not too long ago. So understand something. There's a reason why you don't see me running around saying that Donald Trump gets my endorsement for a vote. We should be voting for him. No. Let's not forget that white supremacy is based on duality. It's two-faced and fork-tongued. Neely Fuller told you about that. White supremacy believes in taking both sides of the issue, simultaneously standing for white supremacy while also taking some of these people who are not classified as white and having them as mascots for white supremacy or even acting as its open violent agents. White supremacy has always operated that way. What you see with Nick Fuentes is actually the beginning of what is going to be a second little white right mayhem spree of the sort that was seen during the first year of the Trump administration, so you need to be aware of that. This time around, it's not just going to be the Richard Spencers or the Matthew Heimbachs and other degenerates. You're going to also have individuals who are allegedly classified as people of color, or at the very least, who are definitely not quote-unquote pure white, and they'll be out there doing the most. And we're going to have individuals who are going to be telling us that there's some sort of reasonable explanation for this. Oh, surely they're confused. We have to show sympathy for the Nick Fuentes and such. Oh, these poor downtrodden, confused individuals. They are victims of white supremacy. No, they are the perpetrators of white supremacy. These are the individuals who are promoting it. You saw how the voter breakdown went for Trump when it came to Hispanic voters. So understand that. Please don't go kidding yourself that just because the Democrats have made themselves persona non grata with black voters, that somehow that means that Trump is on the good guy's side. No, he's not. What Trump is an honest enemy. And while that's certainly better than a false friend, it ain't by much. So family, be sure to keep your eyes and ears open. Because after the orange man gets sworn in again, I think it's going to be like 2017 with a whole bunch of these little white supremacists thinking to themselves that they're going to be calling themselves taking pot shots at black people. But it's not just going to be your blonde-haired, blue-eyed ones who are going to be involved. You're going to have individuals like Nick Fuentes who are calling themselves trying to be on the team and establish their bona fides. And then you're going to have other individuals like Enrique Tarrio who have decided that they're going to also be jumping in. Hell, you had the Hodge twins, those two goofballs who recently had a sit down with David Duke of all people. And they were just sitting there yucking it up. You can find it on YouTube if you're so inclined to that kind of self-abuse. But while they had the Grand Wizard on their little podcast, they thought it was cute to sit there and say, we're going to give you an N-word pass. And then they handed him a so-called card which read N-word pass in all caps on it. Now, interestingly, it was David Duke who said, well, I won't need this pass because I never used the N-word. Then again, neither did Thomas Jefferson. He just went ahead and did it. But the thing about it is, this is the situation that we're going to be looking at. A lot of these individuals who have been calling themselves being critical of the Democrats, they're going to be also telling us that we should let them have a pass for all of this garbage that's going to be going on. And we cannot. You will see, as we've seen before with Enrique Tarrio standing around with Stuart Rhodes and others, you'll have these so-called brown Latinos or even the quote-unquote black ones who will tell you that they're not on the side of white supremacy. Well, I'm not even classified as white myself. And then first chance they get, they'll be sitting there saying, white, Caucasians I identify, look at my driver's license, I'm white. That's what happened with Enrique Tarrio when he got arrested. And the same thing goes for these Hodge twins and such. These guys sit here and claim to be one thing when they're in front of you, and then there's something else entirely with everybody else. And they'll be the main ones who try to have it both ways and say, well, we call ourselves black and we ain't got no problem with the N-word. It's just a word. Yeah, because words don't actually mean anything, do they? Nick Fuentes tried that. He was saying that he was just making jokes, but people took him very seriously. And he's also the same guy who whines and complains constantly if a black person says something that he doesn't agree with. So let's knock it off with the words don't really mean anything, they're just hot air. No, words tell you all about people's intent. And that does have real meaning, because the intentions can be quite threatening. So be sure to keep your eyes and ears open, because this is the situation that we're going to be stepping into. Because when it comes to black people, you better believe that these little white supremacists of whatever stripe they may be, when they come to attack us, it's not going to be with pepper spray. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Jacques Hargett, Eric Bailey, Frederica Moore, Russell Richardson, and Black Voltron Reloaded. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.